You know, guys, whenever I witness these new shows that are greenlit, even with the circumstances in the animation industry as of now, it always gave me the impression that the only way for a cartoon to be greenlit if it's over the top or slice of life, which is what Nickelodeon usually do when it comes to their own cartoons in recent time. But with this show, Kiff managing to move forward in the same ways as Big City Greens despite being a year and a half old, I really knew that if once I get into this show eventually, it's gonna take a while for me to find the charm of its own way in the same ways as Big City Greens. But the thing is, Big City Greens had better execution. This is the first episode that I'm looking at involving Kiff, but the tradition on this channel of looking through new cartoons from holiday episodes is a plus in order to get into these cartoons for the first time. However, after watching Trevor's Rockin Halloween Bash, it didn't win me over. I mean, it's not the worst episode, but it's gonna take a long time for me to get into this show in comparison to other cartoons. The plot of the episode is that Kiff and Barry are gonna be attending to Trevor's Rockin Halloween Bash, which is the least popular in comparison to the other students' party that is mega popular in comparison to Trevor's. Which, the premise of the episode itself, centering around Barry's character, is that he is extremely afraid, and Kiff is willing to give him a normal Halloween that isn't entirely scary. But when the popular student Candle's place ended up getting infested by spiders, mainly of her own doing, she moves into the building while Kiff, Trevor, and Barry were celebrating their own Halloween party, which excited Kiff to the point that she kept going downstairs and upstairs multiple times just so that she can be part of the party that is way more better than Trevor's. But at the same time, Trevor ended up becoming the party person of Candle's party, leaving Barry all alone because, of course, he is extremely afraid during the Halloween season. Barry ends up going to the basement in order to find some kind of enjoyment in the Halloween party without getting scared, but then he accidentally summons a monster from a book named Scarm, which gave him a contract on not being scary for the next 30 minutes, which allowing Scarm to enjoy the party, all the while taking so many candy in order to become bigger and bigger. It leads to a crisis situation where the main characters needs to stop Scarm from taking over their land. To tell you the truth, guys, I really wanted to find the positivities in this episode, and there are when it comes to the motivations of the characters themselves. But the biggest setback of this episode and my impressions of the show itself is dull. Like, it's not terribly dull, but mediocrely dull, to the point that the characters are difficult to feel sympathy towards when it comes to their expressions, because to tell you the truth, I do not like the character designs in this show in comparison to other character designs from other cartoons, especially from Disney Channel. And with these characters having the experience of slice of life and fantasy elements come together, I really got the impression that if they just focus on fantasy elements and not the slice of life thing, maybe I would probably see these characters a lot more better than how I see them in this. The problem is that Barry's motivation of being afraid during the Halloween season is relatable. Like, I can't argue with that. I've seen that multiple times in other Halloween episodes over the last several years. However, he mostly carries his own development while Kiff is dealing with the fact that she shouldn't abandon her best friend for the sake of going to a party that is in the same building as well. She is celebrating Trevor's Halloween bash. Honestly, it's one thing that these characters need more attention when it comes to other episodes before getting into an episode like this, mainly for people like me. But it really feels like that the relationship in this just doesn't feel somewhat accurate and more believable. It may be part of Disney Channel's gimmick when it comes to doing these types of shows, but at the same time, every time I look at Barry in this, it really feels like that he's only doing his own thing, despite the fact that the Halloween party that Candace's throwing is supposed to be for everyone, even though that Candace isn't really a friend person. As for the main star of the cartoon, Kiff, the only thing I've noticed of her character is mainly the voice actor Kimiko Glenn, who I've been noticing a lot more when it comes to other projects that she's done. Which, in all honesty, that's the only thing that got me invested in this cartoon, but when it comes to the character itself, no offense, but it was difficult for me to find any likability in her when it comes to her motivations. Like, her going downstairs and back up, all the while that Barry is dealing with his own problems. It really feels like that the only thing that she needs to accomplish is to enjoy the best Halloween party ever. But if Candace's party ended up happening somewhere else rather than in the same building, then I'm pretty sure that she wouldn't do what she did in this episode by going up and down, mainly downstairs and upstairs, in order to enjoy two things at once, while leaving Barry all alone. And when it comes to them confessing about the problems, it just feels lackluster because it's just difficult to see Kiff in a position where she's in the wrong, while Barry just feels less emotional, other than his problem of being scared in Halloween, and he wants to be not scared. When it comes to Scarm, the only thing that I like is his song, but other than that, he only appears in this episode only, and unless if there's another Halloween episode, which I don't think there is, as of now, he might return. Otherwise, there would have been another different monster in a different scenario rather than what Scarm did in this episode. When it comes to Scarm's motivation on getting Halloween candy and turning people into objects, it's somewhat interesting to say the least, but considering that him appearing up until the second half of the episode, it really feels like that he's mostly an addition in order to have the episode go somewhere rather than just having the characters stay in one place. It's one thing to get knowledge of the characters that you need to understand before watching an episode like this, but when it's difficult for me to find any understanding of how the world building works, especially when it comes to the characters of how they interact with each other, it's really difficult to feel the motivation to root for them, all the while understanding their characters in the same levels as other Disney Channel characters. Like, Scarm's motivation of him getting bigger and bigger is something like it does happen in other Halloween material, mainly in the Star vs. the Forces of Evil Halloween episode. And the motivation of Barry going inside him to get the invitation he gave to him in order to uninvite him is one thing, but at the same time, it just kind of makes me feel like that the characters are going through these motions rather than making me feel sympathy towards of how they're feeling when it comes to the problems that they're in. I'm just saying, I would have been fine if they actually did something with the antagonist, because in the Star vs. the Forces of Evil episode, it was 11 minutes, and I can understand the direction that they took, considering that it centers around doing a haunted house, but since this episode has nothing to do with haunted houses, It makes me feel like that the episode itself should have been a trick-or-treat episode when it comes to the antagonist wanting candy, and with the motivation of Kiff trying to use the monster in order to get more candy and being the most scariest when it comes to scaring other people during trick-or-treating, which I'm pretty sure it does happen in the real world. Maybe I would have enjoyed this episode slightly more. Halloween parties would have been something else entirely if it didn't have this method of introducing a villain while only doing that in the middle of the episode, which led to the characters going outside to find him, because it would have been better off if these characters ended up going trick-or-treating rather than doing a Halloween party. And to tell you the truth, that's literally all I have to say about this episode in particular. Mainly of how dull it was. Like I said, it wasn't terribly dull, but at the same time, even with some positives, it wasn't enough to make me feel investment in this show like other cartoons did, even if it took time for me to get into them as time went by. I'm just saying, nowadays, getting into newer cartoons have becoming mostly a chore for me, even if it may be worthwhile to find the enjoyment and quality in cartoons. But if I never did a Halloween Mania 2, then I wouldn't be able to do this. That just sums up of how less interest I have with this, especially when it came to the subplot Roy had, who is the father of Kendall, which does contribute for the main character's favor against the antagonist towards the end, but Disney seriously needs to end the obsession of mean witch families / witch mean girls entirely, because it's getting really repetitive. We've seen that from Gravity Falls, we've seen that from The Ghost in Molly McGee, and if you want to qualify Remy from Big City Queens, which he isn't a witch mean girl, be my guess, but it really feels like that this obsession has been gone long enough to the point that the social media character, mainly characters from Haley's On It, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, and Andrea from The Ghost of Maya McGee, who is also a witch mean girl, has become a lot more present in these recent Disney cartoons. Granted, the subplot showcased that Roy isn't a ruthless character, but still, they seriously need to drop this, and they would still have the same character in some other capacity if it wasn't part of a witch family. I'm just saying, this is a lot more present every time I witness these elements in these Disney Channel cartoons, since I've been watching them more in comparison to Nickelodeon and even Cartoon Network cartoons. So yeah, that's my impression of Kiff and this Halloween episode. I didn't like it, and it'll take time for me to find investment in this as other cartoons I've went through in the past, but keep in mind, it's gonna be mostly unlikely. Unless if my impressions grew over time, I might be able to review another episode. If there is going to be a Christmas episode from this, I might look at it, but I don't know if I'm going to review it, since I'm mostly mixed on doing another Christmas schedule this year, just like last year's. I'm giving this episode a 5.25 out of 10.